The Battle of Britain is one of the decisive moments in the history of the Second World War, but how we've come to remember the battle as a contest has been shaped by a range of influences. The objects you see here are a unique part of that history. These are nameplates from the Battle of Britain class of locomotives. In and of themselves, these objects are remarkable, but they also offer us a unique insight into the Battle of Britain and its place in the national memory and social history of the United Kingdom. There are 44 locomotives in the Battle of Britain class, and the RAF Museum holds 19 of their nameplates. However, this is not the first instance of a locomotive being named after a Royal Air Force subject. In October 1931, a Royal Scots class express passenger locomotive was given the name the Royal Air Force, thought to be the first locomotive to carry a name associated with military aeronautics. The Battle of Britain class was the most significant, however. The type introduced a number of new innovations into British steam locomotive design. It was air-smooth, if not aerodynamic, and had a flat top and was colloquially known as the spam can. The technology involved in the locomotives is interesting in its own right, but the significance of the class to the RAF story is that Southern Railway decided to name them after the Battle of Britain and secured the agreement of the Air Ministry to do so. These discussions began in 1946, shortly after the publication of Air Chief Marshal Dowding's dispatch on the Battle of Britain. The class operated in the south, in the area covered by No. 11 Group, and adopted the names of people, places and aircraft, along with squadrons who were part of the victory. The class provided a means of celebrating and honouring the battle. Southern Railway also astutely recognised that the battle had already achieved a cultural value, which would afford the railway and its new class a rich source of publicity. The RAF, for its part, welcomed the opportunity to gain further publicity for its role in both the Battle of Britain and the wider victory achieved in the Second World War. Our memory of how the Battle of Britain has been constructed was shaped even before the first air clashes took place. On the 18th of June, Churchill delivered his famous address to Parliament, in which he stated that the Battle of France is over, the Battle of Britain is soon to begin. And Churchill quickly came to define that this would be a battle for the future of civilization, and one that if it was lost, would lead to the world falling to a new dark age, one made all the more terrible for the lights of perverted science. And it's from this address that we still define this battle as being their finest hour. The importance of the battle above the skies of England, not just for the United Kingdom, but for anybody who hoped to see Nazi Germany defeated, was obvious in 1940, and it was used to court American support for the British war effort. Just a year later, the Air Ministry released a historical account of the battle to both celebrate and establish the historical record. And even during the later years of the war, the battle was being celebrated as a momentous event.
The third anniversary of the Battle of Britain finds us remembering that grim period in many ways. Battle of Britain Day sees a representative procession of heroes and heroines marching past the King and Queen outside Buckingham Palace. The men and women who fought through those hideous months in civil defence and factory and must ever share the victory. Those who fought the flames and those who built the Merlin engines for the Spitfires and Hurricanes. The thousands who kept our communications open and essential services intact. The workers of 100 different trades who broke the heart of the Nazis by their dogged perseverance during the height of the Blitzkrieg. In the marching ranks are those who manned our anti-aircraft defences, the gunners who planted that roof of steel over Britain. Then came the broad blue line of the Royal Air Force, men who bore the heaviest part in the struggle 3 years ago. Pilots of Fighter Command, United Nations airmen from every corner of the globe who halted the tide of German aggression. Few stories in our national history can outshine the splendor of our Air Force.
The cultural resonance of the battle continues today. Even those who aren't familiar with the history of the air fighting will at least have a sense of familiarity with the Spitfire. These plates are part of the history of the battle, but how we've come to remember it is very different today than it was in 1945. When we picture the battle, we need to think about more than hurricanes and Spitfires. The Battle of Britain is far more complex than an outnumbered fighter command turning the tide and winning victory through a narrow margin. These plates hinted at an organisation and a preparation that delivered an all-important victory, but one where the prospects of victory were not as precarious as we choose to remember. These objects are remarkable, and they speak to the things that we choose to remember, as well as those that we choose to forget about the battle. And you can see why those who had them affixed to their locomotives were so proud of them. When they were removed, because they were increasingly at risk of theft, many of the crews replaced them with tin cuttings to continue the memory of the battle. But these objects are only really significant if they make those of us present today think about the future as well as the past, and what we will do with the opportunities afforded to us by those who served, those who fought, and those who died during the battle. That is not a simple question, but the more we understand the history of the Battle of Britain, the better place we are to answer it. To discover more amazing objects and how they tell us about the people of the RAF and their remarkable stories, as well as how they won the Battle of Britain, visit the Royal Air Force Museum.